My husband and I got married during the pandemic in New Zealand. Because of the restrictions, we couldn't have the wedding we had always dreamed of, with all our friends and family there to celebrate. But we still wanted our wedding night to feel special. So, we booked a small Airbnb near the harbor, not far from where we lived. The Airbnb was cozy, a little house tucked behind someone else's property, close to the edge of a forest. It had just one room, a small bathroom, and a kitchen. We ate dinner, unpacked our things, and spent some time just relaxing and enjoying each other's company. Later that evening, while my husband was brushing his teeth, I started putting a few things away. When I opened one of the drawers under the bed, I noticed something strange. It was a notebook with a red cover. At first, I thought it might be a welcome book from the host, but when I opened it, I realized it was something else. It was a guest book, filled with handwritten notes from people who had stayed in the house before us. The first few messages were normal, guests writing nice things about the place, thanking the host, recommending nearby spots. But as I flipped through the pages, the entries started to change. They became weird and unsettling. One note said, "Something knocked on the window at 3 a.m., but we didn't see anyone." Another said, "We felt like someone was watching us the whole night." Then there was a longer entry that read, "We tried to leave, but our car wouldn't start. If you're reading this, don't stay after midnight." My husband walked out of the bathroom just as I was staring at that page. I looked up at him and said quietly, "There's something weird in this book." He sat down next to me, and together, we flipped through more of the pages. Many of them had thick black lines drawn across the writing, like someone had tried to hide what had been written underneath. Curious, my husband took out his phone, turned on the flashlight, and held it behind one of the blacked-out pages. We could barely make out the hidden words, but what little we could see made my blood run cold. And then, just then, we heard footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Coming from outside. They approached the front door. Then, we heard the soft click of the door unlocking. A man's voice called out, casual but off somehow. "Just checking in. Everything all right?" But it wasn't the voice of our host. It was someone else. Through the bedroom keyhole, I saw him. A man, wearing gloves and a dark jacket. Calmly, he placed a small black bag on the table and began removing items from it, one by one. My husband grabbed my arm and pointed toward the small window in the bathroom. It was tiny, but it was our only way out. Quietly, we climbed onto the sink and pushed the window open. It creaked slightly, but we didn't stop. We squeezed through, dropped onto the cold ground outside, and ran. We sprinted straight into the forest behind the house, branches scraping against our arms and faces. We didn't look back. We just ran. Eventually, we stumbled out onto a road. The first car that passed, a delivery van, we flagged it down, desperate and out of breath. We begged the driver to take us anywhere safe. He dropped us off at the nearest police station. There, we explained everything. The police went to check out the Airbnb, but when they came back, they said everything was normal. Nothing out of place. No sign of anyone else. Then they spoke to the host. She was calm and insisted that nobody else had access to the house. So we told them about the red notebook. They searched the entire place again, but found nothing. The notebook was gone. As if it never existed. Weeks later, we tried to find the Airbnb listing again. But it had disappeared. Not just the listing, the entire host profile. Erased. Like none of it had ever been real. Since then, I never stay anywhere new without checking the most recent reviews. I look carefully at every detail of the house. Every window. Every rule. My name is Daniel, and last October, I booked an Airbnb that turned into something I'll never forget. Things went wrong, fast. And I was lucky to get out at all. I'd been buried in my tech job for months. Just screen after screen, endless deadlines, zero rest. The pressure never let up. One morning, after completely losing it on a coworker, I realized I was hanging by a thread. I hadn't taken a vacation in over a year, and my body was screaming for a break. So, I decided to disappear for a bit. I needed somewhere remote and quiet. Nothing fancy, just an isolated place in nature to reset my mind. I browsed Airbnb listings until I found it, a small cabin, described as a private cabin escape. Exactly 2 hours from my apartment in the city. The pictures looked perfect, basic furnishings, a kitchen, 1 bedroom, a living room, and a hallway that connected everything. Total isolation. No neighbors. No noise. No stress. I checked the host's profile. His name was Martin. Every review was positive. People raved about how peaceful and relaxing the place was. But one thing kept popping up, almost every reviewer mentioned the house rules. They said things like, "Just follow Martin's rules and you'll have no trouble." It was odd. But I figured people were just being overly cautious. Still curious, I checked the rules again: no smoking. No pets. No loud parties. Pretty standard stuff. Nothing out of the ordinary. So I shrugged off the weird feeling, and booked it. But then, on the day of check-in, just a few hours before I was supposed to leave, I got a short message from Martin. It read, "Please follow these 2 house rules during your stay: do not unplug the lamp in the kitchen. And do not open the basement door, even if you hear sounds." Why hadn't he listed those earlier? Feeling unsure, I showed the message to my friend, Jake. Jake laughed. "You're overthinking it. Probably some broken door or old wiring he doesn't want anyone messing with. Cabins are quirky. Relax." Despite feeling uneasy, I packed my things and hit the road. The drive was uneventful. Quiet. But about an hour in, my phone signal dropped out completely. I figured it was normal for a remote place to be out of range. The signal was weak, and eventually, it disappeared altogether. Finally, I reached the cabin. It matched the photos exactly: a small porch, modest construction, surrounded closely by thick trees. I punched in Martin's entry code and stepped inside. The place was nice, and I immediately felt relaxed, until I stepped into the kitchen. That's when I saw it. The lamp. It was plugged into the wall, casting a dim, yellowish light that barely illuminated the space. The lamp looked outdated, but harmless. Then I remembered Martin's rule about not unplugging it. I shrugged it off and dropped my bags in the bedroom before I continued exploring. Across from the bedroom was the bathroom, small but clean. But in the hallway, there was something else. Another door. It was old, with chipped paint, and had a silver padlock. This was clearly the basement door that Martin had warned about. A chill ran down my spine as I stared at it. I ignored the uneasy feeling and unpacked, cooked dinner, and tried to settle in. But all the while, I felt strangely uneasy. Night came quickly. With no cell service or internet, the place felt increasingly isolated. At around midnight, I heard soft thumping noises coming from the hallway. I froze, holding my breath. Slow, rhythmic thuds. They were definitely coming from behind the locked basement door. My heart pounded as I approached the hallway. The padlock was still intact. Then, remembering Martin's rule, I didn't attempt to open it. Instead, terrified, I locked myself in the bedroom for the night. Sleep didn't come. By morning, I considered leaving immediately. Yet, part of me resisted. I felt ridiculous, being scared away by some noises. I brewed coffee, trying to act normal. But then, things got stranger. The overhead kitchen light flickered a few times. And the lamp on the counter? It pulsed brighter for a moment. I backed away, shaken. I went outside to see if I could catch a phone signal. There was none. But then, I heard it. My name, called out, clear as day. The voice sounded familiar. In fact, it sounded like my own voice. Panicked, I rushed back inside. When I did, I noticed something else. The padlock on the basement door had vanished. It wasn't lying anywhere. It was simply gone. Terrified, I gathered my things and tried to leave. But my car wouldn't start. I got out and stood next to the vehicle, frantically trying to get it going. At the edge of the woods, I saw something horrifying. Someone was standing still. He was wearing the exact same clothes as me, same jacket, same jeans, same shoes. Something felt very wrong. I ran back into the cabin and locked the door behind me. In my panic, I even moved a chair under the handle just to be safe. I stayed awake, too afraid to sleep. Then, around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway, then knocking, right on the bedroom window. I got up and stepped outside to look around, but there was no one there. The following morning, a small box was sitting on the porch. Inside was a note. "Go down or I come in now." The basement door stood wide open, the dim lamp now completely dark. I took a deep breath and slowly made my way down, step by step. When I reached the bottom, I froze. Standing there in the shadows was the figure from the woods. It didn't move at first. It just stared at me, like it had been waiting. Without thinking, I ran. I didn't even look back. I bolted up the stairs, through the cabin, and ran straight into the forest. I didn't care where I was going. I just needed to get away. Behind me, I heard it running too, but I didn't stop. I ran deeper into the trees, dove behind a fallen log, and stayed there completely still. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. When I finally returned to the cabin, my car started immediately. Later, I found a new review posted under my Airbnb profile. One I never wrote. "Left a bit early, but next time I will stay longer." About a year ago, life had become stressful for my family. My husband, Mark, had been working long hours, often coming home exhausted. Our daughter, Emma, had just graduated college and was feeling unsure about her next steps. As for me, I just felt tired all the time, trying to keep everyone together. We desperately needed a break from the city and our daily routines. So, one evening, Emma came into the living room and sat beside me while I was scrolling through Airbnb listings. I clicked on a listing that caught my eye. It was an old ranch house in New Mexico, set far from any busy town. The description said it was the original house of a large ranch that used to cover miles of land. "Look at this one," I showed her. "Old ranch house, peaceful and quiet. Might be good for us." She stared at the photos and shrugged. "Looks kind of creepy," she said. I laughed. Mark glanced at the pictures later that night and agreed it was a great idea. Within days, we packed up and started the drive, excited for some family time. When we arrived, the ranch house looked exactly like the photos. It was old but well maintained, set back from the main road at the end of a long gravel driveway. The house was surrounded by flat, dry fields with distant mountains far behind. It was isolated, and that felt perfect to us. Inside, the house was clean but undeniably aged. For the first time in months, everyone seemed relaxed. After eating, we spent the evening playing card games and laughing together. That first night, Mark fell asleep immediately, but I stayed awake reading a book. Later, I found a new review posted under my Airbnb profile. One I never wrote. "Left a bit early, but next time I will stay longer." About a year ago, life had become stressful for my family. My husband, Mark, had been working long hours, often coming home exhausted. Our daughter, Emma, had just graduated college and was feeling unsure about her next steps. As for me, I just felt tired all the time, trying to keep everyone together. We desperately needed a break from the city and our daily routines. So, one evening, Emma came into the living room and sat beside me while I was scrolling through Airbnb listings. I clicked on a listing that caught my eye. It was an old ranch house in New Mexico, set far from any busy town. The description said it was the original house of a large ranch that used to cover miles of land. "Look at this one," I showed her. "Old ranch house, peaceful and quiet. Might be good for us." She stared at the photos and shrugged. "Looks kind of creepy," she said. I laughed. Mark glanced at the pictures later that night and agreed it was a great idea. Within days, we packed up and started the drive, excited for some family time. When we arrived, the ranch house looked exactly like the photos. It was old but well-maintained, set back from the main road at the end of a long gravel driveway. The house was surrounded by flat, dry fields with distant mountains far behind. It was isolated, and that felt perfect to us. Inside, the house was clean but undeniably aged. For the first time in months, everyone seemed relaxed. After eating, we spent the evening playing card games and laughing together. That first night, Mark fell asleep immediately, but I stayed awake reading a book. Driven by curiosity, we began searching the house, looking closely at places we'd previously ignored. Down the hallway near Emma's room was a closet door, painted slightly differently than the others. It looked like someone had recently touched it up. Inside was a storage closet, mostly empty shelves and some cleaning supplies. But something drew our attention immediately, a strange wooden panel at the back, clearly newer than the rest. Emma knelt and said, "Mom, should we open it?" I didn't want to, but curiosity took over, and I nodded silently. She pulled gently, and the panel swung open to reveal a hidden crawl space. Right at the entrance lay a stuffed rabbit, worn and torn, clearly belonging to a child. Emma reached for it instinctively, but I stopped her sharply. "Don't touch it," I told her, and I instructed her to close the panel. Neither of us spoke much the rest of the day. Mark returned, cheerful and oblivious to our mood. We pretended everything was fine, unwilling to explain. Around 2 a.m., we heard something move softly outside our bedroom door. Footsteps, gentle and slow. They stopped directly outside. Then there was a single, quiet knock. Neither of us dared move or speak. My heart pounded as we listened. After several silent minutes, the footsteps slowly moved away. We didn't sleep again. "Do you think it wanted us to find that closet?" I hesitated, then said, "I don't know. We still haven't fully understood what happened in that house. Maybe it meant no harm. But strangely enough, we've discussed returning someday, to understand, to face whatever was there. Only next time, we won't pretend it's not real. I want to share something really weird that happened to me. One night, around 11:30 p.m., I was driving back home. It was late, and the roads were mostly empty and quiet, which was normal for my area. I noticed, quite a ways down the road ahead, that there was a police car pulled over to the side with its lights flashing. There was also another car completely stopped in the middle of the road. Seeing this from a distance made me feel instantly uneasy. At first, I figured maybe there had been a car accident, and I felt anxious, worried about potentially seeing something upsetting. But as I slowly drove closer, I realized it was something else entirely. My heart started to beat faster, and I began to feel genuinely nervous, something I usually didn't experience. As I approached, I noticed that the police officer was standing next to his car. He was speaking loudly to the driver of the other vehicle, which was stopped right in the middle of the road. The driver was clearly very upset. He was shouting, "It was already like this when I got here. I promise I didn't do anything. I didn't hit anything." The police officer was saying something back, but I couldn't clearly hear exactly what. Then the officer turned his flashlight towards something on the road, in the same direction they were both facing. As I got closer, I slowed down and rolled down my driver's side window to get a better idea of what was happening and whether I could safely pass by. As I looked ahead into the opposite lane, I noticed what they were looking at. In the middle of the road, there was a deer, but it was sitting in a very weird position. It was hard to explain exactly how strange this position was, but I'll try my best. It was sitting almost like it had been carefully placed that way, with its legs twisted and crossed in a completely unnatural manner. As I slowly drove even closer, trying to pass by, I ended up making direct eye contact with the deer. And I mean really direct eye contact. The deer's eyes were not normal at all. Usually, they have shiny black eyes, but this was different. The eyes of this deer looked like empty black shadows, very dark, very empty, and unsettlingly large. Its head was tilted downward. But the eyes were looking straight up at me. They stared directly at me in a way that made me feel completely frozen in place. I felt like I couldn't look away or move at all for a few seconds. I had never felt anything like that before. I quickly rolled my window up as fast as I could. I was driving so close to the deer that I could almost touch it. As I passed by the deer, it felt like time had somehow slowed down. I couldn't seem to move or react normally. When I finally got home, I immediately began looking online to see if I could find anything that could explain what I'd seen. I came across some diseases that affect deer, making them act strangely. One disease I found was called chronic wasting disease, and it makes deer behave oddly, sometimes even looking a bit like zombies because of how they move and behave. However, even after researching the deer, I saw didn't quite match what I read about. I kept feeling, deep down, that something else was happening, something not just caused by a simple disease.